ברשותכם אני אדבר באנגלית, כבוד המשפחה. I want to thank Molly Goldstein and the entire family for giving me this opportunity to say a few words in memory of Jay. This is particularly meaningful since the memories of our son Yaakov Yehuda Frimer and their beloved Yaakov Sender Goldstein are bound up together in the Knesset Kilat Yaakov. At the end of this week's Parsha, Baalotcha, the Torah recounts that Miriam and Aaron criticized their brother Moshe. Their primary critique was against Moshe's decision to remain unmarried and free of family obligations. After all, they argued, weren't all three siblings accomplished prophets and communal leaders? In response, Moshe is silent, and God himself comes to Moshe's defense. He notes that Moshe can't be a family man since he is always on call by both the people and by God. What's more, Moshe's level of prophecy and concomitant spirituality is unparalleled. But most interesting, the Torah in passing also gives testimony as to Moshe Rabbeinu's character. And the Torah says, "Now Moshe was a very humble man, anav ma'od, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth." This evaluation of Moshe Rabbeinu as a nav is very strange and surprising. Moshe humble? The man who spoke words of fire, who was undaunted in the presence of the strongest man on earth at that time, Pharaoh, who led the entire people of 3 million out of slavery, who was unafraid to argue even with HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, the man who smashed HaKadosh Baruch Hu's luchot after seeing the golden calf. Was that a humble, meek man? Rabbi Jonathan Sachs suggests an answer which is really quite straightforward. You see, humility is not to be understood as being invertebrate, as lacking a backbone, or having low estimate of oneself. That's false or counterfeit humility. True humility is what can be termed as mindlessness of self. An anav is one who never thinks about himself because he has more important things to preoccupy himself with. He takes God and his fellow man so seriously that he doesn't need to worry about himself, to take himself seriously at all. Humility is not self-abasement. It's not self-anything. It's about the ability to focus one's life on the needs of others. As the noted Jewish philosopher Martin Buber would have put it, in an I-thou relationship, the I is so silent that one can only hear the thou. Now that's biblical humility. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's trait. He was forever driven to do Hashem's will and intensely focused on redeeming Klal Yisrael both physically and spiritually. In an attempt to attain these goals, he brought to bear every gift he possessed, even a little chutzpah time with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, leaving little, if any, time for his own self-indulgence. Ladies and gentlemen, the many individuals who have mourned and eulogized Jay Goldstein have noted that his life was centered about chesed. Jay's motto was, Olam chesed yibaneh. The world is properly built through acts of chesed. And while this is undoubtedly correct, to my mind, Jay's involvement with chesed was only one expression of a more fundamental quality of anava, of humility. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, his humility stemmed from his overriding concern and preoccupation with the welfare of others. Each of us in the Berman community has a Jay story. Let me share with you one recounted to me by Professor Avram Nudelman, which I repeat with his blessing. Jay was running for a position on the Berman Shul board, and Avram was asked to count the ballots, a job he had done many times before. While counting the ballots, Avram was astounded to see that despite the real competition for each position, the vote for Jay was absolutely unanimous. The shul election tradition was not to reveal the actual count, just who won and who didn't. But Avram was so amazed with the absolute unanimity of the vote for Jay that he mentioned in passing that the vote for Jay was unanimous. Now, if something like that happened to me, I probably would have sat there and smiled proudly. Not Jay. Avram said it was the only time he saw Jay Goldstein hopping mad. And it was he, Avram, who was incurring Jay's wrath. How could you announce that the vote for me was unanimous? Somebody else's feelings might be hurt. Now this is a story that not only confirms the esteem with which Jay was held by his peers in the Berman community, but also the total concern that he had for the feelings of others. My Jay story begins with a heart-to-heart talk I had with Jay several years ago, shortly after my triple bypass surgery at Shari Tzedek Hospital. Jay was, of course, one of the first to make the trek to Yerushalayim, and in our conversation he noted the highly academic, intellectual makeup of the Berman community. Its professors, scholars, rabbis, MDs, dentists, PhDs, and scientists. What was he, a Pashut Balabas, doing in our midst? But Jay, I said, you are what the Gemara in Kiddushin Lamed Aleph calls a Baal Masim, the man of deeds and mitzvot in our midst, the one involved in all sorts of chesed 24/7. The Gemara teaches us that all must rise out of respect for the Baal Masim. For as the Ran and the Rif explains, they are Torah in action. Sure, learning is important, says the Ran, but only because it leads to action. Gadol halimud shemivei lidei maseh. You, Jay, I said, are the Baal Masim of this community. But in his inimitable style, Jay just shook his head and waved me off, totally oblivious to the centrality of his contribution to the vibrancy of our shul. My friends, how appropriate it is that a Sefer Torah is being dedicated to the memory of Jay. You see, the Gemara in Sota, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, records that during the Israelites' travel through the desert, the ark with the Luchot, the Aron Habrit, traveled side by side with the casket of Yosef HaTzadik. And to the queries of passers-by as to the juxtaposition of the living Torah and the deceased Yosef, the Israelites would answer, Ki ein zeh ma shekatuv bazeh. This individual Yosef HaTzadik fulfilled what is written in these tablets. In a separate discussion, in Bava Kama Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara records that at the funeral of the righteous king of Yehuda, Chizkiyahu HaMelech, a special honor was paid to him. Kavod asu lo b'moto. A Torah was placed on the coffin, and all present declared, Ki ein zeh ma shekatuv bazeh. This righteous King Chizkiyahu fulfilled what was written in this Torah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here this evening to pay tribute to Yaakov Sender Goldstein. With this Sefer Torah, we bear testimony that this Baal Masim and Ish Chesed, Jay Goldstein, is outstandingly worthy of the accolade Ki ein zeh ma shekatuv bazeh. May his rich life continue to be a source of inspiration to his family, his friends, and the entire community. Yehi zichro baruch, u'tehei nishmato tzura b'tzora chayim.